All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Today is June 4th, 2026, and this is the audio edition to the Daily Trade Strategy Brief. NFA Compliance Rule 2-29C, sub paragraph 1. I just want to leave that up there for a couple. I'm not required to read it, but I am required to display it. I know some of you want me to read it. Reading it would be like filibustering for hours. We're just going to filibuster this morning by reading the risk disclaimers over and over again to make sure you understand the risks associated with trading. So that'll be filibustering the risk disclaimers. All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. Let's see what we have. Kind of final day of the cycle. It is a cycle day 3. So just kind of looking at, yeah, stay in bed if you don't want to risk anything. Absolutely. All right. All right. Let me, did I lose my, oh, here we go. All right. Very good. All right. So let's take a look. This is the RTH session only. All right. So um, I like looking at the RTH primarily simply because that's where all the bigger institutional players are involved. Yes, overnight Globex, uh, is important to some degree, but you have all the majors playing during the RTH session. That's where they get the greatest amount of liquidity and so forth. Yesterday was a P-shaped profile. Okay, this was cycle day 2. This was cycle day 1, right? And of course, we are on cycle 3. P-shaped profiles are weak patterns, tend to be short covering type rhythms. And as you can see here, the RTH session on cycle 2 did not get above or stay above cycle 1, so that kind of initiates some potential weakness. And then we saw a break of that low. All right, so we'll see what we have today. Let's look at the cycle charts. So what do we have here today? So currently the NQ, let's talk about the NQ quickly for a moment. All right, the NQ, this is the CD1 low. Okay, and the current statistic right now carries a 92.79% of a positive 3-day cycle. Remember, price greater than cycle day 1, okay, on cycle day 3. That's the formula for that. Right now, NQ is currently above that cycle day 1 low. All right, and we'd like to see that above that during the RTH as well. All right, and that would fulfill the NQ's statistic. In terms of the ES, all right, we got a little bit of ways to go, but I mean, again, never going to rule that one out. Right, we're not that far away. 20 or so handles. That's we can get that in about 30 seconds if they want. But anyways, the goal here right now is to get above that cycle day one low. And again, overnight we saw that the D level, okay, was fulfilled. Markets never sleep. So this was actually early this morning, around 7:30, 8 o'clock. Right, price did fulfill that. Actually, it hit it earlier in the morning. All right, and then retested, and then on the retest, we got the bounce. All right, so that's currently has played out. All right, so we'll see how the remainder of the day. Again, the goal here for the day would be to reclaim the cycle day one low. All right, the after hours drop there was because of Broadcom earnings after the close. All right, so then overnight here, we just simply got kind of a you know sideways pattern. So what would need to happen here for the bulls? Now let's kind of discuss the bull case, right? Um, Simply enough, need to clear the prior overnight, right? The overnight high, right, at the 58s. Not give up any ground below, right, the overnight low. And so kind of ideally right in the middle here of the overnight, you can kind of see this is the prior low. All right, so there's our sandbox, if you will. All right, good morning, Mark. How's the audio there across the pond? Hopefully we've been stable. All right, so ideally, you can see the profile put in overnight, fairly balanced activity. So what we'd like to see in terms of on the bullish case, um, we would certainly not want to see much weakness, if at all, below the 40s, right? 75.40. So 75.41, if you want to use the prior low as your reference point, right? So any subsequent pullback here, we would want to see responsive buyers. So responsive buyers versus initiative buyers. Okay, so um, responsive buyers naturally would be the sellers are the aggressor, buyers are the passive longs. They're responding to the seller's aggressiveness, but then we would want to see those buyers absorb, right, the sellers, clean up the sellers, and then work their way, have the responsive or passive buyers, once the sellers are absorbed, become initiative buyers, right? And that would be the ideal kind of pattern, right? So any pullback, absorb, don't give up much ground, clean everything up, and then work their way high. Kind of force actually a move higher, right? Get people short, and then use that as fuel to move it higher. So the goal ultimately here today is to reclaim um, at least the cycle day one low. So the question here, Aura says, when you say the price greater than the cycle day one on cycle day three to reclaim the BD low. So the BD low, buy day low, is the same as the cycle day one low. All right, it is the cycle day low up to 1600. In other words, we disregard the cycle day activity. No, so there's two ways to look at it. All right, the CD1 low, okay, includes all sessions, right? So 24 hours. That's how I primarily look at it, is from a 24-hour perspective. Okay, um, you can look at it from the RTH perspective, regular trading hours, and we do have statistics on both of those. They're not too much different. The statistics are a bit better overall on the 24-hour period. Okay, so it's all sessions, 24 hours. That's where we look at it from. Does that help, Orist? Should be fairly clear. All right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Now, good question. Absolutely. All right. I mean, if you use the RTH, let's just quickly do that. So if we go over to an RTH chart, I think the 5 minute here is an RTH, right? Yeah, this is an RTH, right? So let me see if I have it on here. I don't. Do I? No. So let me quickly add that we got about a few minutes. So let me just quickly add uh, the. I don't want that. I want the TTT lines. Right. Right. Settings. 1 second. Let me put ES in here. Okay. 24-hour session. No. So we're gonna go. This will be the so it looks as though 95's up here. Yeah. So this is the cycle day one low up at 95's. Okay, 95's. This is RTH, so this is cycle day one. This is cycle day two, right? RTH hasn't started yet for cycle three, right? So the cycle day one, right, would be 95's. So you can use that, you know, but of course we're much lower right now down here, right, at the moment, right? So we would need to get back above that. So can you use both? Yes, you can. I tend to use the 24-hour session. All right. All right. Cool. Very good. Let's see what happens here. Pre-planning for a potential trade here would be the A10 on a pop up there to around the 57-ish area. Okay, that would be the initial. There was that's a Virgin. I think it's a Virgin A10. Yeah, that's a Virgin A10, meaning it has not gotten tagged yet. All right, so that would be a live available trade there. I'm looking, given the overnight activity in the range, I'm kind of initiating a little bit more anticipating kind of balancing to, maybe down, given some of the pressure late yesterday in the tech area. All right, we'll see. One final thing, we got about a minute and a half. One final thing I wanted to note. Right, this is going to be a fairly sizable test here, right, down in this area here, right. So 75.20s, right, to the 40s, which by the way, the price here pre-opening is pretty much kind of tested, zoom, came into this area and got a little bit of a bounce. Right, so this high kind of high volume, we got previous week's value low, previous month's value high. Okay, so these are the labeling over here. So prior week's value low and previous month's value high. So that should be some zone of interest on this pullback. we'll see if it becomes that. We'll see if it does become more important for everybody. All right, let's have a good session. Feel free to post. All right, and let's see what we got on deck here today for us. So kind of referencing that, that 40 or midpoint area, right, as we just outlined, to see if there's any, response, any significant change around that midpoint VWAP, right, kind of this 40 area here. So keep an eye out on this. This would be the big, initial tests on any direction. So will they treat it, are they going to, I don't want to ask a question with will, are they going to treat this as a buying opportunity again on the bigger picture? We'll find out. All right, so VWAP holding right now. That's good. Good early sign. Yeah. So the overnight high is right where the 810 is. So we'll see if that on that first touch we get the initial sell reaction that we would anticipate. Usually you get a reaction off the first touch. Again, most of the heavier activity down below, so outside in perhaps type of trade today. Upper edge back to the center. Not much of a pullback though. Still would like to see a little bit deeper pullback into the higher volume area there, but watch that 50 area now, which is the developing value high for any pullback um, holds. 50s would need to break now for a deeper pullback. So far, first touch of the overnight high do have a reaction. All right, not much of a reaction though. We'll say. All right, we are short of the 810. Let's see if we do get a rotation back lower. Right, so the early lean, of course, right, is favoring higher at this stage. All right, so let's watch this 75.50 on the retrace here. If we get a retrace, that would bring, if we do get a retrace, that would bring into our targets down here on this high test short. If you're not playing the short against the high, the 810, again, you'll be looking for, a long potential down below. Come on, Seabiscuit. There we go. Starting to scale the 810. We'll bring our stop down to break even. All right, so that 810 short play unfolding nicely again. Outside in. All right, so the target on this would be back down towards the VWAP, a little bit deeper, 45s, 47 zone on this. What does outside in mean? Outside in means trade from the outside edges, reversion to back to the mean or back to the middle. So outside in kind of infers a range type, market. So if you take a look at the balance, how the market is somewhat balanced here. Okay, we're looking to trade uh, at the upper edges and the reversion back in. So this would be outside, right? And this is inside. Make sense, Ram? Okay, versus a trend, which is the opposite on a breakout, kind of inside to the outside. So expansion, right? Outside, inside is more contraction or reversionary type trades to the middle. All right. All right, right down to VWAP. There's your VWAP target, and we got a stop trail elected on that. And a nice response there off the VWAP, the Whopper. No pickles, no cheese. Give me the Whopper. Super duper Whopper. All right, just gonna hang out now for the next sequence. Okie doke. So, questions, comments, considerations, anybody worldwide? You guys across the pond? Anybody? All right, let me know. Not much else really right now. Kind of still within this range action. I think we laid it out pretty well so far. Outside in, VWAP responses, looking for the prior high response, right? VWAP responses here, right? So if we continue to get strength, right? If we continue to start building into, holding above the upper portion of the developing value area, right? Again, the idea here is to get some shorts. The bullish idea is to get some shorts, kind of um, in there, and then use that as a squeeze. Right? I don't see that right now this early. I mean, we're still within the first 30 minutes. Right. So again, why? But we had a good idea this morning that we were going to get some sort of a two-way action given the overnight. And this is where the overnight action. Oris was asking about the cycle and the usage of kind of RT8 session versus um, Globex, right? True that the Globex session, most of the big institutional mutual funds do not play that time period, that session, but it is important to monitor it because we get a sense. Again, this action here, aside from the first 25 minutes, was all overnight activity. So that kind of told us that this area was a balancing area. All right. So with that, coming in today into the RTH, well, what was the activity overnight? How do we use that as a potential read for the opening and the early, at least, again, the early section, early portion of the RTH session? So again, that's why I outlined as a potential, two-way with an outside inside type rhythm. Again, I don't know if it's going to happen that way. It's great that it did. I can pat myself on the back and all that, but I don't really do that anyways, right? But it's more, trying to kind of form an outline of the potentials and then, act, trade accordingly. If you take a look at this, I know it's after the fact now, but if you take a look at so if we're looking at, outside in, right, type of a play, you get this move up here above the overnight high, right? So this was the overnight high at the time. So you get a move above the overnight high and you get a 200 XT up here. Okay, the 200 extreme. And that's what that star means. Okay, and so that's generated by CCI over here. But take a look at the amount of over here, the bid-ask volume ratio. Okay, yes, the market moved higher price-wise. Did the market move up with a lot of fuel, with a lot of buying? If there was a lot of buying associated with that, right, you'd see the oscillator here certainly much higher than where it's showing. Okay, and you'd have a good continuation of buying. So as it started pulling back, you'd want to be seeing more of that oscillation above zero line, right? The bid-ask volume ratio. Look what happened. It just kind of collapsed immediately, right? As soon as it kind of peaked out, and then it rolled over. So if you're playing the A10, okay, you could have, yeah, again, a couple ways to play that, right? So, again, trigger it into uh, on the way up into the A10, or trigger it on a right side pivot rule type of play, right? On the dip back below, right? So on the dip back below, the trigger there. By that time, yes, you don't get the higher price, as you would if you just sold it up into that area. But okay, if we have good range in price, using right side pivot technique, right, you're getting some confirmation. And again, it's a decision of whether or not you want to just trade at a level with no confirmation or have some type of confirmation. All right. So that's really up to you. It's a you know design thing for yourself. But again, kind of using the PKB type of look above, fail playbook. Okay, that's the play there. And by that time, you have confirmation, all right, that it peaked out, right? So XT up here and then roll over and then trigger. It's like when you tell your dog to roll over, rover. Okay, so it's like a trigger. So again, that would be, a way to play that as well. All right. Next thing here, we'd be looking for some further strength, and yes, we're getting it now. And here's the key. This is the first touch, right? This is the second. What's the most important and the higher probability of a reaction, of a trade opportunity? Yes, indeed, the first. We all know that, right? Thank you. Right. Second one here, right? Okay, we got to move back down, but now you have to be very, mindful of holding that upper value area, and we had here right into the rising EMAs in the A4. Okay, so not really a discount necessarily, right, into the fair value zone, but again, no more selling, right, and then buyers stepped right back in, so then that propelled it back up. So that second touch, might have played for a scalp opportunity, not much more than that, right? But that first one, that's the one you want to pay attention to always. All right, so now what are the levels we going to need to be mindful of? This current pivot zone right in here, all right? This pivot here, this low and this low. So this pivot zone, right? So we want to see bulls, right? You want to see bulls continuing to absorb any sellers and then kind of keep pressing higher. But if there is a pullback here, this becomes the next critical zone. So call that the 50s, 52s, right? Everybody tracking? Okay. And that's the current outline for the time being. All right, what are they doing over in the pit room today? You got Bo and Manny over at the pit room today if you want to visit the pit room. Looks like they're talking about some individual stocks. Yeah, you're right. Well, I paid for my car repair anyways. All right, now we're just back into observation mode, being patient for the next sequence. Let me just bring in this while we're waiting for a moment. Okay, I showed you this yesterday, and I just want to bring it up again. All right, again, this is a daily chart, and those little yellow hash marks, that's the 50% midpoint. All right, so you can see here yesterday's action, right, engulfed, and again, I wrote about this, right, engulfed the prior three sessions. So, if you take a look at everything here, right, on this rise up, this has been, would you say this is a change of character? I'd say this is a potential, always potential till after the fact, right? But it's always a potential change of character. And this is what I was noting yesterday, that one of the kind of potential signals that I'd be looking for is we never really had a solid close above any of these mid or below any of these midpoints, right, on the way up, which was pretty interesting. Yesterday, indeed, not only did it have the close below, it closed below the lows of the past 3 days, right? And then it extended down to, notice where, the last cluster area of midpoints, okay? So, this, I kind of call this if you don't have profile, I think everybody has profile these days, anyways. But if you don't have a profile, and again, I don't have a profile in this chart, but you can kind of like, kind of the poor man's profile, right? They're not necessarily points of control, but the midpoint is an important, marker for a session. All right. And so it's just interesting that price now has retraced back to that area. And that's kind of a concentrated area of activity. And again, if you for those that have profile, you know what I'm talking about. You can go over to the profile and take a look at that area. This is a pretty highly concentrated, area of activity, right? And so it should be no surprise that the market is, responding right in that area. Now, the question becomes, well, is this a reversal? It's a pullback. It's not a reversal yet, right? Some people are already classifying it. Could be some cracks in the pavement, so to speak, but again, it's not even. I mean, this is the first day, or yesterday was the first day. Yes, is it noteworthy that it took out, it engulfed the prior 3 days? Absolutely, it's noteworthy. So you make a note on it, right? Now, that is what has happened. The next thing is what happens after that is the important part, right? So we're currently at these midpoints, and again, that's should be of no surprise. If it is, again, do a little bit deeper dive on that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to reverse. It just means, it's an area where, there was activity before, concentrated activity, right? That's where the institutional players did fair amount of business. They're going to probably want you. So if you got the dip buyers, right, the BTFers, buy the F and dip buyers, well, that would be the first area where they would want to re-engage. But again, whether or not that holds, we'll all see together over the next several days. But just want to keep that in mind that, and it's just a simple approach, just outlining the midpoint of each session. It's not rocket science, right? But it can give you some perspective on, the potential where price, can find some increased activity. So that's where price is right now. So it's adhering to, that type of midpoint logic, if you will. It's not predictive, but you don't even need to predict. I know people are trying to, well, what are they using to predict? Are you using a Ouija board? Are you using the magic 8 ball? What are you using to predict? There's no reason to predict. Okay, all you need to do is identify, structure, different types of structure, midpoints, overlapping bodies. I mean, there's a number of different things. Profile. So what's need to use a Ouija board for? You know, and then you say, well, if it breaks through, what would be the next targets above, or what would be the next targets below? And really, those targets are essentially areas, zones that were highly trafficked. So high volume nodes, let's go back to the profile chart here, right? So right now it's holding those, those midpoint areas that I outlined. Okay, so this is just the daily. Yeah, this is the daily. So all in here, there's a whole bunch of midpoints we just showed on that chart, right? The next level, again, zone of interest would be slightly below this area, right? And that brings us down to the weekly. Well, so again, this is the weekly low over here, and then the weekly value, prior week's value low, and the prior month's value high, right? So this, this could become a significant, zone as well. Right now, this is where we want to be. So, all right, and again, this is our T8 session. So again, it's just all reference points, you know, and then of course, you see what the market, has done in the past, and the idea is to make some inference of what type of response may develop today. And then you drill that down and say, okay, if we get, nobody should be surprised that the market's getting some response in this vicinity. I know I'm not. But that doesn't mean I knew it was going to happen. It's just I'm not surprised with. I'm really not surprised at anything with the market, you know. But being prepared, having some preparation, the tools I know that we have, bar none, I think they're second to none, truthfully, right? But tools are one thing. Knowing how to use them is another. You could have a, piece of heavy equipment, or you can have a little battery operated screwdriver. If you don't know how to use it, you're going to get injured. So learn how to use the heavy equipment, learn how to interpret in our world, learn how to interpret various tools and signals and so forth. And again, that's why you're here, isn't it? I know it's not because of my good looks and my personality. Dr. Dean comes for the snacks. Okay. Again, the goal is still to reclaim that cycle day one low up at the 76s. Still not that far away, so plenty of time. Again, even if it didn't, even if this turns out that it doesn't reclaim it, I mean, we're only talking, you know, 7% of the time. So, all right. I'm just in observation mode at this point. I don't really have anything more to comment on at the moment. I will say that if we do get a deeper decline, okay, the A10 down below here, right, is right by VWAP, so that's a good kind of match on a pullback there. If it was to develop, so you're kind of gonna move there, and then you get looking for a snap bounce, and it's right by this pivot as well. So it's kind of a decent zone there. If it unfolds, that would be kind of the next kind of key one there. On a little bit of a shorter term, micro basis, the A4 here could be in play as well. All right, so on this pullback here, um, so if we take a look at this chart, bring this in. And again, this is from my Ninja platform, but this is, I believe this is 24 hours. No, this is RTH. This is RTH. So on the RTH chart here, all right. Again, 5 minute basis here, right? So kind of looks like a bit of a bear flag kind of formation, all right. And you can see the wicks here. Got a lot of wicks here on the 5, right? Little cluster of wicks in here. So again, we all know what the wicks stand for, right? In this case, buyers pushed them up. At the end of that candle, sellers pushed them right back down. All right. So what does that indicate? On these pops, sellers are responding to this degree, anyways, right? But again, buyers though are still, pressing, right? Because you can see we're obviously stair stepping up. Where would that change, right? Where would the bears take more definitive control on the bear flag, right? I'm in this kind of area here. I would say this, the opening range midpoint, right in here. So let's just call that the 50s, make it nice and easy, right? 75.50. So a break of 75.50 to the downside, right? Again, it's not going to be a straight line, but and then you could probably, look for a retest of the lows. Until then, if and when we have to respect that the bulls right now, okay, have right now the control, right, to the upside. Even though we've gotten some wicks, all that the wicks have done, all the sellers have done is repel the buyers from really expanding quickly, right? But right now we do have, again, this series of higher highs, higher lows, kind of defining that up grind, right? So now, kind of that's kind of what I'm always doing. I'm saying what type of pattern is the market running in? Where would it change? You got VWAP here, right here, point of control VWAP. All right, again, that's it. So call it 50-55s, right? I mean, give yourself a little bit of space. Again, that would be on a dip, you're looking to buy it. On a break and then a failure to reclaim it would then shift the dynamic. Okay, that's what I'm things like these are the things that I'm always looking for, right? So if the move is up, trying to identify, where would a potential shift happen. Any dips right now are still buyable because the bulls still have control. But if that shifts and it goes below kind of a key reference zone that we're looking for buyers to continue to respond, if that zone is violated, right? And again, whatever that zone is, right now we're calling it 50-55s. It certainly could change, but you get the idea. And then if it violates it and then fails to reclaim, right, then that changes potential dynamic. So keep that in mind. That's always kind of what I'm looking for. I'm not trying to make any predictions along those lines. Right? What's the observation right now as it stands? Buyers are in control. Yes, we mentioned some wicks, but that's all I'm mentioning. I'm not saying those wicks are reversals, right? But the buyers, you can clearly see that they're still very much active, and you go with the dominant force, period, right? All right. So hopefully that helps a little bit just from a different chart perspective that I look at on the other screens. Remember, 7650 is the objective, okay, on the RTH, excuse me, on the Globex session, right? Cycle day one low, 7650 is an objective. 75, what did I say? 70, 75, 7650. I don't know if I stated it right or not. Yeah, did I state it right? I can't, I don't remember. I got so many numbers in my head. My head's going to explode. What do we got? We got 75.25. Advances decliners right now. So favoring the longs. All right, guys, I'm going to take about a 10-minute break, and I'll jump back on very shortly. If you have any questions, comments, of course, as always, just post them up. But I'll be back in about 10 minutes. All right, everybody, back with you. We're kind of now in this no man's area at the moment. Okay, kind of consolidating again up here near the highs, which is nice. So since the opening, bulls have held control in a little bit of a kind of a grindy move up. It looks as though the gap has been fulfilled, has been closed. So we do have a gap close. Let me post that up here. RTH gap close complete. All right, so that's I guess part of the market's goal is to close the gap, which it did. We're still open on the cycle day one low. Still got time for that, but for the most part, since the opening here, we did get that grind, upwards. Right, gap is closed here. All right, prior close. Now, some people would say that, well, the gap is not officially closed because they reference the prior close as the key for closing a gap. I don't. My basic concept of closing the gap is if we gap below the low and we reclaim getting back into the range, okay? So as far as I'm concerned, the gap has been closed. So the gap is the gap outside the prior range. Some people have it different. They're very pure to the prior close. That's fine. All right. But for me, as long as they get back into the range, then the gap is fulfilled. So whichever one you use, that's fine. I have no argument if you use the close, but that's how I view that. All right, I am going to cut the stream off. Yes, very nice. I am going to cut the stream off here for the day, 11 o'clock. I hope you got something out of today's session. And again, give us a thumbs up around world if you can. That'd be helpful. And we'll come back at you tomorrow. Friday, I am definitely half a day for everybody on Friday, and trying to catch another long weekend where I can. It's the summertime now, or getting into the summertime period, so want to try to take as much R&R time as I possibly can at the end of the week into the weekend. So very good. Yeah, congratulations on for those this week that are getting some payouts in terms of the prop firms. So congrats on those. Keep that working hard, and we will reconvene with everybody there tomorrow. All right. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you. Have a great rest of your day.